All right, Craig, welcome to the Golf Coach Podcast, mate. How you doing?
I'm awesome. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
No, mate, I thank you very much for coming on. I've kind of seen some of the stuff that you've been doing with Seb and Matt, and I've had Seb on prior before. And, I like using this podcast to kind of create a little bit of point of difference and talk to, I guess, all professions within the golf world. And I can definitely say that I'm assuming that you specialize in speed stuff. Would that be correct, Craig?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a big part of what I do. That's for sure. Working with those guys takes up a chunk of my time. It's great fun. Really love it.
So let's jump in. So people who have been long-time listeners to this, I had Seb on in the early days, right, Craig?
Yeah.
And I thought, I want to get this guy on. He had like his first event.
Yeah.
And I was talking to him and I remember at the time he was so raw. And I said to him, Seb, if you just get your diet sorted out, your training sorted out, you're going to be a world beater. I know it. And I've actually got it on podcast, right? Like I've recorded. Because just the sheer size of the man and the athlete of him, isn't it? It's remarkable. So Seb, right? Seb Twiddell.
Exactly.
Twiddell or Twaddle? How do you say it?
I'm going Twiddell.
Twiddell? Yeah, I would too.
Yeah.
Can you tell me what's Seb's record? Has he got the club speed record?
He has. So it's just a little bit under 170 miles an hour. So it's 169.6 miles per hour.
When did he hit that?
So it's a little bit over 12 months now. So kind of getting close to sort of 14, 16 months ago. Yep.
And I was speaking to him and he told me that he was gearing up to try and get back for it. I thought that was a very interesting thing that he mentioned, that he was getting ready to start pushing for records again. Yep. Is this just a process? You can't just kind of go, I'm going to go super hard today and try and beat this record. Do you have to set out a plan to try and get up to that? How does it work?
Yeah, exactly right. So think of it kind of like a cycle, and you're going to do sort of preparation for that cycle. You're going to get into the start of that cycle and you're going to try and find a peak, and you're really hoping that the athlete stays healthy. You're really hoping, no colds and flus and stuff, and no injuries. And the process of peaking actually takes quite some time. Yeah. We did a little cycle. I would say it'd be about 3 weeks ago, a month ago, and he reached 166 miles per hour.
Okay.
And then we assessed what happened in that. We did some technical work again, which slows him down. So the viewers might, think, slow, but 145 mile an hour, something like that. Which is where he works on technical, kind of think of like Tommy Fleetwood doing cutoff iron shots. We do that with drivers at about 145, which is quite impressive. And then we'll start ramping again and working again. So we'll go for another peak in the coming weeks, actually.
Okay.
And then it requires a lot of recovery when you go for let's say you're going for a PB or a record, or you're just going for a quite intense 1 rep max type session. The guys are shattered, so it does take a little bit of recovery before you can actually peak again. If anybody's been in the gym and they've gone like heavy on a lift, like a deadlift or a squat or something like that, you don't just go in and attempt that every day. You're going to get pretty messed up. So we treat it exactly the same. Yeah.
That's very interesting. It's interesting because I'm sure a lot of people listening to this probably wouldn't be, I guess, kind of completely aware of that. But it's amazing how much pressure does go through the body, because I even know myself, and, I've got an affiliation with Callaway, and, I teach the club fitter here in New South Wales for Callaway, and you talk about optimization when even fitting people with driver. Yep. And there's a point of no return. Like I just think I even saw a video. I had Trotty on recently from TaylorMade, and Trotty was even talking about it's like 15 to 20 shots. It's all over. Like you can't go much far past that.
Oh, definitely. And that, sometimes even less for the individual. And, in a trained individual, sure, you can stretch that out a little bit.
Yeah.
But what these guys are kind of doing, it's really intense. You can't just kind of flick a switch and switch it on. And so, we really kind of, we do, pieces at some times to give them a rest. We do some technical work. There's a whole bunch of golf, what people would know is basically golf concepts and golf techniques. We do a bunch of that. And then we kind of, I guess, find that the athlete's a little more rested. Yeah. They're starting to feel a little bit more energetic. So we start to ramp up from that. And then we have that all-out blast, it's so much fun. It's the most fun session to coach, because basically I just cheerlead. I'm just like, let's go. And there's not a lot of technical stuff. It's just intensity and energy and effort. And then we build again. It's awesome fun.
It's amazing when you talk about the 1%ers, right? And you literally are like less at that top, right? Trying to really squeeze it dry. Like it's right up there. Before we get into kind of your story a little bit, can you tell me, I'm interested to kind of know, you hit 166, last time was 169, I think it was, whatever you said, 0.7 or something. Do you know the difference between those two? Can you see it technically? Can you see it? That must be so challenging, like to actually see the differences. Do you currently know what was different between now and then?
It's a list, right?
Yeah.
So in Seb's particular case, but in all the guys that I coach in their particular case, they're actually in certain parts of their gym program as well.
Yeah.
And so when I know that an athlete's already fatigued and does a number like a 166, I know that a higher number's coming very soon once they get a chance to do a deload in the gym and get fresh.
Yeah.
What I look for, particularly in that session, is generally speaking like hand path length. And if the athlete's a bit tight, they're not quite getting the swing length that they would normally get.
Yeah.
And how quickly they're moving pressure between the feet.
Yeah.
And how much pressure they're producing as well. So you kind of know when early on in the session that they ramp speed up quickly, that they're quite fresh and they're moving really well. And then sometimes it's kind of like an old diesel engine, and they'll hit 60, 70 repetitions, and suddenly they'll start getting a little bit quicker. And that's a battle. And they're kind of mid-program. They're kind of like middle of the program. They're not really peaking at that point.
Yeah.
It's really it's good fun. And I think we don't know where it's going to go. We don't know what the number's going to be in the end, and that's probably the most exciting part of it. We could be in a whole other bracket, the 170s, which a few years ago was like, huh, what?
Yeah.
Wow.
It jumped up really quick, didn't it? Like I think for me, Seb kind of gave me an interest being Australian, gave me an interest in long drive. And I think Martin has been fantastic for the sport, Martin Borgmeyer as well, about how he documents it a lot. He put out an unbelievable video about, it's a really cool video. I really enjoyed watching it. It took out half my workday, I think, watching it. But he was talking about each person breaking the level and when it was and just how crazy it's gone in the last couple of years. Like it's just really jumped. Like there's been a little bit of growth, but it's really gone, right?
Oh, massively, yeah. It used to be talked about as, the Roger Bannister effect, right? The 4-minute mile. Someone finally did it, so then another guy did it and another guy did it.
Yeah.
It just makes people so hungry in training, and they're filled with self-belief. So, they're like, they say to me things like, so, I'm training, twice a week. Can I train 3 times a week? And the answer is yes. And why not 4? And so they just really commit to it. And when that number gets out there, someone posts it, the other guys go to work. It's like, I want that number. Like I want to own that record. So they put in the time, they put in the effort, and who knows where it ends. It's going to be massive.
It's really cool. It's great. I love what's going on with long drive. I think it's really interesting. It kind of ties in well what's going on with live golf. And, I remember one time, Craig, I went down to, I spoke at the Australian Golf Expo down in Melbourne, and I was up there and I kind of just watched a few people beforehand, and I heard someone talk about the term for the seminar, whatever you call it, the forum, whatever it was golf is golf, right? And they spoke about participation in golf and what it actually looked like. And I think it was, I'm going to say this is a very rough number, but I think it was about 20% of golfers or pick up a golf club were actually members at a golf club. Okay. So the rest were driving range participants, long drive kind of guys, social club activities, mini golf activities. It was quite interesting. Top golf, like what you guys have got up there. And it was really interesting because golf it really has evolved a lot. It's not what people think it is. Like if 20% of people in Australia are actually just members at a golf club, the other 80% are social. Yeah, it's really anything out there for what you want in the game of golf, right? It's really cool.
Oh, absolutely. I have clients, they don't own irons. They don't own them. They've got a bag to carry clubs in, and it's only got drivers in it. And, they're not interested. They just want to go to an indoor sim, and they just want to get fast. They just want to hit it further. And eventually, they might have a friend who says, come on, just get a couple of irons and let's go play the course. I want to see how far you can hit it. And that's becoming more and more common, and I think it's probably fairly huge in the States that you've got this massive transfer or crossover from sports like ice hockey and baseball, and already baseball guys kind of move in a similar fashion. They grab a golf club and they go really quick, and they love it. It's great fun, and they putting and chipping, yeah, maybe later or something like that, but there's a really big area for players that just want to do that, which because it looks really fun.
Is there a certain type of personality that you see with that? Do you kind of see the same personality type come through? Similar?
I think you see a person who probably has had a crack at sport or athletics at some point in their career. Yeah. And they kind of think, I want to kind of stay in it a little bit and do something competitively. Yeah. And then also you get guys who originally they're like, this is for my golf. And I'm like, yeah, I completely understand that. Yeah. And then a few weeks later, it's like, I don't really care if it's for my golf. And then a few months later, they're like, man, this is just so much fun. I love it. And they they shift, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, totally. Like it's usually someone who wants to play competitively. Maybe they've played other sports and they loved it and they missed that feeling. Yeah.
Yeah. I saw a video once pop up on social media, and it said, to my ex-college professional footballers, how's your golf swing or your marathon training going? Like it was, I thought, wow, that was really cool, because it's true. Oh, yeah. I got a friend of mine who's a marathon runner. Now he's in the gym. I see him at the gym every day. He's a trainer and he runs marathons, and it's a real science. I talk to him about what's going on with his prep and stuff, and he does stupid times, right?
That's crazy,
yeah, it's ridiculous. It's very similar. Kind of when you're talking about the cycle, it reminded me a lot of my friend Tom's training for marathons. All right, so let's get into a bit of stuff with you, right? Tell me, were you always attracted to hitting the ball far? Like, how did you, I'm going to use the term, you stumble into being a long drive expert?
I think I was told, I just remember I just played golf how I played golf, and then I just would get some feedback, like, man, you hit the ball a long way. And I was like, oh, okay. And then, eventually when I turned pro and I started to play a few pro-ams, that was usually what the amateurs would tell me as well. And that's when they started asking me questions like, how do you do that? And I was like, I need to know the answers, right? I need to kind of figure this out, right? So I would say it was just part of regular golf to start with. And I kind of wanted to figure out how I did it. And so I just really used myself as kind of the guinea pig. And, I had limited things to kind of measure with back then. I didn't have a TrackMan. I didn't have all that kind of stuff. So I really learned a lot from other sports, and then also a lot about kind of like throwing sports, discus, javelin, shot put, that kind of stuff. And just dove into strength and conditioning like full on. So I was like, kind of where does this speed come from? How does someone like move a club fast? Where does this speed, produce? Like what's good to get more of it? I kind of, got the club onto the ball kind of side of things, which was kind of obvious, but I was like, how does the club go quicker? Like, do you just grit your teeth? There must be sort of more to that. Just maybe super curious, and even though I was massively curious about all areas of the game, I think that kind of grabbed me just a little bit more.
Yes. Yeah. It's interesting as well, because people develop speed all different ways, right, as well. Like some guys, like as a gentleman down here who crushes it, Tom Holtz, he's had absolutely no training, nothing, just himself at home in his net or whatever. He might have reached out to you, I'm not sure. But he missed out on going to Worlds by 3 meters at an event in Sydney.
Oh,
and
wow.
He's just a guy who just crushes it. You watch him, he literally barely gets it past parallel at top of the backswing. He just, like I've had him on the quad, it's like 347. Like, what? Where? It doesn't even look like it. But then you see other people like Seb, and it really looks fast. It looks fast. So it's different, very interesting about how people do. I can understand how you would have got really excited about kind of studying through that. So, So you were doing this prior to TrackMan coming out, or you just didn't have a TrackMan at the time?
Yeah, I remember seeing TrackMan 1 after I'd already kind of been mucking around with it just on myself. And then I think it's a good sort of like 5 years later before I can actually get, things measured on a launch monitor and start to say what is fast, like who is fast, and because, even back then you weren't really hearing Tiger's clubhead speed. You might hear a ball speed. It was pretty rare. It wasn't on the screen like it is now. It's like it's in the corner of the screen like all day, every day. And you're like, well, this dude pounds it. This dude looks really strong. He's very, very athletic. Okay, he's kind of every field. He's just demolishing them. He's got a six-pack, pecs, and big shoulders, and no one else really has. What's going on here? He's clearly stronger. And so it wasn't, until years later I was able to actually quantify what the numbers should be. At that stage, you're really just looking at, like, can you hit the ball further, And there's a lot to that, which isn't necessarily purely coming from clubhead speed. You got to make good contact. You got to launch it right. You got to have the right spin rates. Is your driver good? So it's a world away from that now, where you can actually just train swing speed or club speed, with the devices that we have now. It's a heck of a lot easier, and you get answers a lot faster. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's remarkable. How fast do you think Tiger was at his peak, off the top of your head? What do you reckon?
I'm thinking he could go like on the course, sort of like easily go mid to high 120s to 130. Similar to like a player like Minwoo Lee does at the moment, or Cameron Champ. Cameron Champ's probably just a little bit quicker. He swings 135, which is pretty crazy fast, but Tiger didn't specifically speed train that we know about. I'm sure he just used to rip drivers sometimes in private, but it was never documented or anything like. But I reckon, I'm going to say like he could go to 130 if he really wanted to rip one.
I've got a video of Tiger that actually went viral that I posted once, of him hitting driver over a corner somewhere. And I tell you what, Craig, he's not leaving anything in the tank. And I reckon when you think about Tiger, the competition really got him going more than anything. I reckon he just got faster in competition because he was just such a dominant figure and just picked up that energy. Like you say, like he probably wasn't doing a whole lot of speed training, but he was just that confident he could just hit it as hard as he wanted.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the era where it was still like a steel shaft and a tiny little head. And he's pushing the ground with that front foot and spinning that front foot out like in majors, like he's hitting it hard. That was pretty cool. Yeah.
All right. So tell me now, I want to talk to you about some distance training. So we've got some topic areas I want to go through. I'm going to try and segment them and really educate the listener as much as possible. We have a lot of coaches that listen and do have a lot of very, very keen golfers, as you can obviously be aware of, because we've had like Dr. Mark Bulls coming out tomorrow. So it's got some pretty crazy technical guys on. We've actually had Lee before from the UK, Lee the Long Drive, awesome. A long time ago as well. He was it was very cool hanging out with him. That's probably about 30 episodes ago.
Okay.
But tell me now, right, when let's just say a recreational golfer comes to you and says, Craig, I want to start speed training.
Yep.
Can you go through potentially 5 things that you want this person to do or have ticked off? What does a checklist look like when that initial consultation?
Okay. All right. So you need a little bit of background. And the first thing is obviously, have they got any issues with the body at the moment? Are there any things that they're nursing? Are there long-term things? And are they being looked after? Have they been looked after? Where are they at with that kind of stuff? That isn't a problem if you've got a long-term injury or you even have an injury. You can still speed train, believe it or not, but it needs to be really sort of like planned well, and you got to take care of that person in the way that they do it.
Yeah.
Once you pass that, that's really just usually like quite an honest chat, if that makes sense. Then you have to have a look at what they're working with. So, and that means their golf swing and also their equipment, and you really want to kind of figure out their knowledge as well. So, have they ever done any golf lessons before? Are they aware of any measurements that might be necessary on a launch monitor? And what do they understand about ball flight? Because you don't necessarily want a massive change to ball flight. It may not even be a goal. Like it may not be even on the radar at that point. That person wants to continue to hit it how they're hitting it, but they want to just hit it further. So technical knowledge, experience level, injuries, and then after that, really you get straight into the swing. I personally look at the swing, break it into, what is good, what can we keep, what needs to change. And then from the assessment of the swing, then the plan's kind of, drawn up, written up. Some players give me one session and they go, hey, that was fantastic, thanks. And I'm like, okay, bye, see ya. Yeah. And you go, well, okay, cool. And other players go, right, so what do you want me to do in the interim before I see you again? Like, when should I see you again? And, you kind of go, all right, we can start here and we can slowly build. So injury first is kind of really important. And then, recreational golfer, that's a lot of different things, you know what I mean, these days. Yeah. It's amazing how good some of those recreational golfers are. Yeah. And it's like, I don't really have a handicap. They swing it and you go, oh, yeah. Man, that's beautiful.
It's remarkable.
Really have a handicap. Yeah,
Craig, I say this. I reckon on a weekly basis is it's the only sport in the world where you can have a C-grade recreational golfer who plays once every 2 weeks, who can have the same average club head speed as the top players in the PGA Tour.
Yeah, literally.
So you're not going to go down in the cricket nets and go watch 4th grade cricket where they're drinking stubbies and some guy's bowling 155 clicks like Brett Lee. It just doesn't happen. Or you go to the local tennis court, no one's hitting it, 200 kilometers per hour in a serve, but I can have a 20 handicapper come to me. I got one guy, right? He's a 7 handicap and he sits on 130. 130 is his little leaky fade. And I go, mate, you got the skills of an 8 handicapper and he can get to 140 when he wants. You got to learn to control this. You know what I mean? Like if you want to play golf. So it's such an interesting sport, isn't it, in that facet?
It is.
How important do you think it is, Craig, to ask the student how they actually try to develop the energy? Like if you say to them, like, how you're trying to hit it harder, how are you trying to get it faster? Are you doing it in the hands? Are you doing it in the feet? Is that kind of an important question to ask them that?
Yeah, massively. That goes into that part where you're trying to figure out as a coach what their knowledge is. Yeah, okay. And you've got to be fairly confident in what you know if you're the coach. And then when you get their answers, you might know straight away, like, oh, that's not actually a real thing, but that's their feel, right? And that's what they believe they're getting it from. And then you can ask questions, like, hey, what other sports have you played? And then they might say, tennis. And you go, oh, all right, no wonder your feel is being described like that. That's kind of, I understand where that's coming from. Yeah. And some of them will just be very, very honest with you and they'll go, listen, I just really go harder at it, and they don't really know. So you've got some, kind of some blanks to fill in there so you can give them some knowledge and away they go.
It's interesting. Yeah. I know of myself when I go harder at it, I don't get any more speed.
Well, that's an interesting thing, right? Because
I get too far off the ball.
Well, the more reps you've done at a particular speed, the harder it is to get away from it.
Yes.
You've got that internal clock, which is, your sequencing and your timing and you know where impact is and you want to arrive roughly similar. And so you get geared to it. Like there's quite a funny, sorry, I shouldn't say that. It's funny to me and funny to the guys I coach, but there's a TaylorMade video where the guys got drivers out and they're like, we're going to rip it, and I think they even had like a long drive comp and it's like Dustin Johnson and Tiger and those guys. And DJ goes, I'm going to pound one. And I think he went up 2 miles an hour. We have a chuckle about that because, if we're going to pound one, then the long drive guys, they'll go up 12 or like 20. Yeah. They're just so dialed, they just do so many reps at the same cadence, it's, it is a speed in the end, but it's a cadence, and takeaway goes back and then you load at the top and you come back and that's familiar. And so, I'm hitting it pretty good. So why mess with that? Right. So it's just how many reps you've done. That's all it is.
It's interesting because I think a key word there is intent too, right? Because I've had students of mine say to me, Toby, I want to hit it further. And I go, have you tried hitting it harder? They go, no. Okay, well, maybe you should. Just start off with just there because if you can keep it within the same range and just hit it harder. Because I heard a great interview with Mr. Robert Rock and he was talking about one summer break. Well, over the Christmas break, whatever it is where he is, winter break probably where he is in the UK, right?
Yeah,
but I think it was in Dubai at the time. And he was talking about the Bryson DeChambeau effect. Mm-hmm. And he goes, he just went away and he, over the whole summer, just trained hitting it harder. I don't think he did anything greatly specifically. He might have done something. And he came, I'm paraphrasing a number again here, but he came straight to Dubai and his average club head speed for that week was up like 8 to 10 miles on what it was last year, just because it was the first
Massive.
time in 20 years he decided to hit it harder. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
he never actually lifted his intensity.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, and he has what most people say is such a beautiful golf swing, right?
Mm.
So he stays within himself beautifully and he maintains form, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
that's quite impressive. And I think also the other thing that speaks to is like, you don't have to get messy to get speed. A lot of people probably think that, like you're going to ruin your swing is probably a common misconception. So you might call it like good technique allows a player to put more force into the club, and they don't necessarily need to create a swing that they're not going to like, they're not going to want to see on video, etc., etc. It actually sometimes it makes them improve positionally, if that's something I can say, or aesthetically even, because you get the club in the place where you can throw it, you can pull on it, you can really put some energy into it. If you put it in a bad place, that's kind of hard to do. So a lot of people with nice swings, like that example, I can easily see a big gain happening to someone like that. He was ready for that. He hasn't gone hard in so long. He goes hard and massive gains. That's 8 to 10. That's huge for a tour player.
I'm pretty sure. Like I could. I'll see if I can find it. Put it in the show notes down below. But I listened to everything that he's been on, and he was talking about the Bryson effect at this time. So it's obviously a few years ago, because the Bryson effect was a few years ago, right? That he put on, which he did great for the long drive as well, right?
He's awfully calm these days, right? DeChambeau.
Well,
so
he sorted out his nervous system a little bit, right? I think he's been. I think Bryson was really well read up and knowledgeable in biomechanics, but didn't actually go into, I guess, the nervous system of it and the effect of being so highly inflamed. Like you can't be performing well and optimizing when you're eating In-N-Out burgers 24/7, because your brain's not in a good spot. You know what I mean? And carrying all that
100%.
fat, and weight is weight, right? Weight's weight, and you're carrying 100%. It around. And it definitely, in his case, I believe it was, he went too far and he learnt the lesson, but he's paving the way, right? He looks 100%. Good now.
It's all good now, yeah.
Have you ever seen him hit it in person?
No, I haven't. I didn't get to see him when he came down and played live.
Yes,
I'd love to see him hit it in person. Yeah, 100%.
Do you know? It's very strange. I used to work at Manly Golf Club, and the trainer, he'd be listening to this. He was a trainer at the time, Will Flitcroft, and he went to the Australian Open when Bryson played potentially as an amateur, and he was in the net warming up next to Jordan Spieth, and I said, he swings it better than Spieth. I said, this guy's going to be better than Spieth. He was only a kid at the time, right? He was only little. He had his little flat brim hat on or whatever, and you could just tell that. I wasn't really well read. I obviously wasn't picking a thorn out of the bushes. He was the number one amateur in the world at the time. But I was like, this guy is good.
Yeah, 100%.
Tell me about, so to start increasing speed, so you've done the assessment, you've started doing a few things with the student.
Yep.
What are some really good strategies, like training aids, or what can a student use?
Okay, the number one thing is a radar. So I know when people hear that, sometimes they're like, a TrackMan, sure, like as if, but there's some really, really affordable ones, very portable, battery operated, and you just put them in your golf bag, just make sure the batteries have got some charge, and they go with you everywhere. And they are really, really accurate. There's a couple of misunderstandings with them, because you'll run an expensive unit like a TrackMan or a Quad in conjunction with them, and they will read a different number, but they're not locked into the impact of the ball like these other devices are. Yeah. They're purely just measuring the club head whipping through. And this may not be common knowledge either, but club head speed's faster prior to impact than it is at impact.
Yeah.
So the club is slowing down by the time it touches the back of the golf ball. And so these little guys, these little PRGRs as an example, that's one I love using. They can read 2, 3, 4, 5 mile an hour quicker, because they're catching the fastest part when you're coming through that arc. Okay. They're getting kind of the precise moment the shaft's unloading. It's somewhere around low point, and obviously driver's low point's back of the ball, right? It's not at the ball.
Yeah.
And so that's how a TrackMan can say, you were 105, and the PRGR can say you were 109, 110.
Okay.
In testing them, this device, PRGR, Black Pocket, under 140 mile an hour club speed and less than 200 mile an hour ball speed. The ball speed's within 1 to 1.5 mile an hour of a TrackMan or a quad.
Wow.
That's crazy impressive.
Yeah.
And so people can grab these ones. You jump on eBay and you grab a unit, they're $250 to $350.
Yeah.
Buy some rechargeable batteries. That's the number one tool if you're going to train speed. It's like, I'm going to attack weight loss, but I don't have scales or a tape measure. Like, come on, you have to have one.
That's very interesting. I actually heard something. I sat in a meeting, a business meeting, I'm going to say a year and a half ago, and this German-based company, and they said to me, TrackMan will be obsolete in a few years. They reckon that there'll be an app on the iPhone. Yeah. They reckon they're getting the testing done on the iPhone to be pretty close to check in already. So when I mean, obsolete, it might not be, like you say, it's completely accurate, but there's going to be an app, surely. You know what I mean? Like it's these guys are talking about. They said they couldn't tell me too much, and it all made sense. And I've got the GC Quad too, right? So I'll make sure before it comes out I sell it. But
100%. Yeah, I assume it's probably LiDAR based, and it's really like the screen, the video screen, and the ball and everything traveling through that screen, and really good math, right? Being able to calculate exactly everything, and so they can figure out where the club head's moving and where the ball's going and how fast everything's moving through that screen. It's just kind of like, how accurate will that be once you test it to something that's super accurate?
Yeah,
because it's going to be super portable. It's going to be amazing to use if it produces the goods, if that makes sense. Yeah. There's already an app that I've used, which you put down kind of like landscape, and you sit it on a tripod and you hit balls through it, and it will give you ball speed, club speed, and those kind of things, club path and all that kind of stuff. And it's just not accurate, unfortunately. It's awesome, but it's just not accurate yet. Yeah.
Not yet. No. You got. It just seems like when you say it out loud, you think it's just going to have to happen. Like with how much technology is in the phone, like it's going to come. Anyways, all right. So radar. Now, what about some other stuff like some speed sticks or rip sticks or those things? I actually got a rip stick sent to me. I haven't used it yet, but are they a very good tool to use?
Absolutely. So I think initially you don't need to race out and get one if you want to start speed training straight away. So race out and get a radar, definitely. Book a session with someone who has a launch monitor, figure out where you start from. So, go see a coach that has a radar. I can swing it about this. I got up to about this in the session, and then start training. Then you want to develop, kind of like the ability to swing really hard and not collide with the ball. And you may want to actually overspeed. Okay. Now what that means is that the club that you're swinging has better aerodynamic properties, so it can cut through the air better. It can also mean that the overall weight is less than your driver. And so it's kind of like a future method. So what it means is that you can go a little faster than you currently can. You can develop reflexes, and you can develop kind of like a sense of moving quicker than you normally could. And that will drag your speed up. So it will actually allow you to I guess, experience swinging faster straight away. The devices that tend to kind of promise to build muscle and strength, I'd probably stay away from those. That tends to not be as effective. Parachute type stuff and drag and all that kind of stuff. That tends to actually reduce performance, slow people down. You work hard, you sweat, you feel it, but you're practicing going slower because you've got this parachute that's constantly slowing you down. And I've actually seen some players develop kind of pretty bad habits from that kind of stuff, ruin sequence, etc. So I like the training aids that allow you to adjust weight and lighten down to go quick, and also cut through the air really easily. And they replace swinging with your regular driver in certain workouts, but they shouldn't replace it entirely. You shouldn't be just completely swinging a speed device, 100% of the time.
That's an interesting thing that you kind of mentioned, a bit of gold. So you don't like a person being put through too much resistance. You like that person to be kind of practicing their body being under a kind of fast twitch and kind of an acceleration all the time. You don't want them ever kind of working through a heavy load.
Yeah, exactly right. The brain is just really phenomenal at what we said before, which is that cadence, which if we spend time grinding, for example, someone's at 120 mile an hour with their driver, which is a fast swinger, and they get the device which kind of gears them to like 105, and they spend a few months at it, they'll be 115 or 112 after that training. Like, I can guarantee that. And they're like, what the heck? I've been working so hard. But their brain is remembering the timing and the cadence of that golf swing. And so they're taking the 120 towards that 105 that training device is actually teaching them and teaching their brain.
That's interesting. I'm going to say as well, Craig, that kind of sounds to me as well that you've taken a little bit of that from your strength and conditioning training as well. Would that be correct? Because you look at all different types of athletes, like my friends who are professional footballers or professional golfers, or all their training is definitely catered towards what they're trying to do on a daily basis, right?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
So that's kind of where you kind of got that. You reckon that it makes sense too, right? In your head, makes sense.
Yeah, it definitely does. And not to sound kind of like too humble or anything, but like, look outside of golf, and it's been around a long time. It's probably the last few years in golf where we're all sort of speaking about speed development. But, the 100-meter sprint's been around a long time. Javelin, shot put, and all that kind of stuff. It's been around a long time. And so really, when you want to learn a lot about speed development, you can really look into those sports, athletics, and there's protocols in place that have been proven, over a long period of time to actually work.
Yeah. A
slight adaptation of those needs to happen when you're talking about, golfers. But really kind of like a lot of the gems are out there already from prominent coaches and in other sports based in kind of like, athletics and that. And so really, like, I just dove into that and just read as much as I possibly could. And I was extremely lucky, very fortunate. So the very first long driver that came to me, he was just a golfer, and he had a very, very short swing, and was around about 110 mile an hour, and said, hey, I want to do long drive. And everyone went, really? Like, from 110 mile an hour, you want to dive into long drive? And I said, hey, cool, let's go for it. And he started hitting the ball a bit longer, and then he had a couple of people that he ran into, and they said, oh, we muck around, like, hitting the ball far. One guy was a baseball player. The other guy was a cricketer and a baseball player.
Yeah.
And he dragged them along one day, and got talking to them, and they were Jeff Thompson's sons, who was the Aussie fast bowler.
Yes.
And they were big lads, very athletic lads. And Alex was already really quick. He was already kind of like around 140 or early 140s.
Oh, wow.
And Ben's just a really good athlete, but he was actually a strength and conditioning coach, exercise phys, and he worked with discus throwers, shot putters, javelin throwers. And at the time, he was working with Matty Denny, who was probably one of our best discus throwers of all time. And so he and I used to have far too many text threads and conversations, and you should read this book and I'll read that book, and I wonder if this would cross over to discus. I wonder if this works for golf. This is what I'm doing here. Are you doing that?
Yeah.
That was just brilliant. And kudos to Ben. He actually got himself to 150 mile an hour, which is just crazy. He wasn't doing any training, wasn't really doing golf at all. Just knowledge, athleticism, and kind of like a couple of weekly training sessions. And at that time, that was the golden mark. That was the benchmark, like 150, like, ta-da. So, when I message them and they're like, Seb's up to what? They're like, that's crazy. Yeah, 100%.
So we've got what we have there is we have the right clubs, which is really important. The right driver, obviously, to optimize launch conditions, especially when you're chasing ball speed, right?
100%.
And we've got a radar, so something to kind of measure clubhead speed and potentially ball speed if you need it.
Yeah.
And we've got a bit of strength and conditioning work as well, and kind of cycling through those there, right? It seems like a pretty good set of ingredients, right? And then obviously you got to fit in your technical work there as well.
You do, yeah. And so again, it's the detail that you want as the golfer, and Well, yeah, like the guy I mentioned before, who just comes in, pops in, and like figures out how to go quicker, and he's happy, and away they go. And then there's the person who they're like, I have a goal. There's something I want to do here. Met this really lovely girl on the weekend. Very strong, loves gym, can swing a golf club not too bad. And she said, "Hey, I want to get into long drive. Let's do this. People have told me that I'm fast," and I'm like, "Okay, cool. Let's hit a couple and see if you're fast." And she's fast, 108, untrained, and all the wrong moves, respectfully. And so we got to kind of build something that's going to work, but her natural athleticism and strength's got her at already a very high speed. That's probably like the highest speed on the LPGA tour for people listening. It's 108, 110, something like that. Long drive ladies, they're getting to 130. They're very commonly around 120 to 125. And so she's going to need a plan. She's going to need to learn how does a golf swing work, as well as how to train and how to make that golf swing faster. So it's really down to the detail that the person wants,
I get that as well. So I could be like anyone with their running training program, which depends what they want, what they want out of it. All right, let's just change gears a little bit. Let's talk about one of my sponsors of the podcast, Back to Basics Putting tools you can use. They've got all their tools. I've always talked about the Back to Basics putting mirror, which is the Pro Path putting mirror. It's got the 15-degree arc on it, designed by Richard Woodhouse and Grant Field. I also use their ghost holes. I use their gates, their putting mat here as well at home. It's fantastic. Use the code below, support those to support the podcast. TM15 gets you 15% off your Back to Basics putting, all your putting gear. It's all below. Links below. Jump on it. Thank you very much for all supporting as well. Now, Craig, give me something. You're an absolute bomber. Have you got something on the putting green that you can help us with?
100%. So everything you just mentioned, unbelievable training aids. And the mirror, it's really like stroke based. So, jump on that and just putt away and get your stroke healthy. And then move away from the mirror, putt to a hole, and use a technique called eyes on, which is look at the hole while you're putting. Okay. Whilst you're looking at the hole, you're going to assess the distance and control your speed. And so if you combine those two elements where you're working with the mirror so that the stroke's online and you're making solid contact with the ball's going to roll the right speed for you consistently. And then you can tap into your athleticism. And just like, shooting hoops in basketball or something like that, you can develop that athletic approach to look at the hole, eyes on the hole, and start to develop speed control. So that's a pretty deadly combination if you're doing those two things.
Interesting that, isn't it? That bit of depth perception. A friend of mine coaches Steph Curry golf, and he said that he speaks to Steph. He spoke to him when he had him in person about, he said, "You got the best depth perception in the NBA, from 3-pointers. Like, you're amazing." He was educating him on regards to how Steph saw the short game stuff. So what I'm hearing from you there is that you're really working on your depth. Why do you like that a lot? Do you like that because you feel like the golfer spends too much time looking down and kind of too engaged in that position and not externally? Is that why you like it?
100%. And, when you do that internal work, it's very valuable. It's very important. Grip, posture, stance, all that kind of stuff. And I was extremely lucky. I worked with Grant Field. I worked alongside him for like 4 or 5 years. And so I was privy to watch Cameron Smith putt, which was disgusting.
So good.
It's terrifying. And if you can have this beautiful stroke and then you just don't look at the target enough and you don't focus on the target enough, it's worthless. You hit this beautiful putt nowhere near that destination. And something Cam does extremely well is his head turns and he looks at that target for quite a substantial amount of time. And when that head returns to the ball, the stroke's gone and then the ball's gone. And so you've got to develop that trust in what you're doing. You can't just, manage a stroke consistently and focus on your stroke as the only thing that you're doing to develop that speed control and seeing break and how the ball moves on the green. It's massive. It's really important.
Yeah, it's so true. We all see Cam Smith. People would be seeing Cam. He really locks on that hole for a period of time. It looks like he's frozen in time. Like he really looks at it for a long time. And that's what I can't get my head around when I look at people like in basketball, Steph Curry, how he shoots and they get the ball. He like jumps at the same time he's getting the ball, looks at the ball, takes like a millisecond look at the basket and shoots.
And it's gone. Yeah.
It's remarkable how quickly, like, he can from halfway within a second with tons of pressure on him, like tons of pressure, get closer to the basketball than I can from 20 feet with half an hour on the putting green. You know what I mean? Like it's remarkable, isn't it? It's an incredible when I think about that. So I like that one there. So depth perception there, kind of keeping your eyes up there, focusing a bit more externally and not so much being too concerned about internally. Good to separate the training on those two. Love that, Craig. That brings to the end of the Back to Basics putting segment. Support those who support the podcast. TM15 gets 15% off, and lots of people are buying it. And so you should. It's a great putting mirror. Like, it's the best one 100%. Out there.
Yeah.
It's the number one training aid you should have in your golf bag. Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So now let's talk a little bit about, I want to talk to you about sports psychology, right? And about the opportunity for when a student, you know, you mentioned about there previously about when they should be getting into kind of long drive and what questions you're kind of asking.
Yeah.
How important is this part of it for you, you know, in your day-to-day life?
I mean, I think it's probably the most important for me. And then eventually it becomes probably the most important thing for the athlete themselves as well. Yep. It influences every aspect of what you're trying to do. So whether you want to call it mindset, you know, or mood management or self-talk, it's probably the difference between, you know, successfully completing a plan and not.
Yeah.
You can have just a really beautiful plan all drawn up and, you know, you just got to tick the boxes and that person's just getting way too frustrated. You know, can't really deal with kind of the ups and downs of a plan or a program. There's no necessarily instant gratification to the process. It's sometimes daunting. It's like, am I going to get fast soon? Like, when's this going to happen? Yeah. And so it plays a massive role in getting a person through those ebbs and flows of what they're trying to achieve. And there's some, you know, really kind of like cool things that you can start implementing like right from the start, which will help you be successful.
Yep. And what potentially might that be? What do you think people could be implementing?
You've got to, in my opinion anyway, you've got to find the mindset where training's more enjoyable than competition. Yes. So you just want to train. Like, training, you find all the enjoyment in training, you know, chipping away at those little personal bests, adding them all up, getting better at drills, getting, you know, better results, you know, comes after that training has improved. And so when you realize kind of the process is actually where the joy is and the happiness is, it changes everything. And competition actually starts to become easier as well, because that's kind of not as important. Like, I've trained really well and I can't wait to just get this comp over and get back to training because I know that I'm going to get better. Yeah. It's just a whole other ball game when that happens for that athlete.
I heard Roger Federer talk once. They asked him about retirement like 10 years before he retired. And he just said, I keep trusting my practice. You know, like my practice is good and I'm going to keep going. And I thought, wow, so powerful. You know, he just trusts his practice was good at the time. So when you talk about there about creating that enjoyable environment to train there, Craig, are you saying that what some strategies around doing that? Could it be like measuring your practice or having games? Like, what strategies can make it more fun?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, you started this process because you enjoy it. You know, I love golf, or I love long drive, or I love whatever it is. And, you know, what do you love about it? And how can you take that and put it into a training session so that every time you decide that you're going to train, you experience that? And, you know, it can be obvious. It can just be speed going up. But what other aspects, you know, do you enjoy about that? And that has to be included for that athlete. When you're up against it, you know, and you're really working hard and you're not going to get that automatic power. Wow, this is so amazing. You've got to really kind of find that enjoyment for what it is that you're currently doing. Yeah. I just love swinging a club fast. Yeah, I'm always happy when I'm doing that. Yes. I'm happy when it's 10 under my PB. I'm happy when it's equal to my PB. I'm always just happy doing that. So it's never a chore. It's not, you know, I don't really, do I have to do that this week? I'm like, let's go. I wish I could do an extra session this week. That's yes. the key. You know, that's where you will be successful.
Yes. Got to enjoy the grind, right? You got to enjoy the grind. That's just in all aspects, right? It's
100%.
Everyone just sees Scotty Scheffler collecting all these trophies, but no one sees what's going on. That's interesting about that sports psychology. How much do you think comes into play do you think us coaches can play a really big influence in creating that good environment as well, and creating that type of situation for our students so it's not a grind?
Yeah, I mean, choice words there from you, like create the right environment. You can sometimes, kind of get on a run of being like the headmaster, or kind of coming down too hard on students. And while you genuinely want to keep them on track, and you're doing it for their benefit, at the same time you've got to make sure that it's still stimulating, it's still fun, and you want to lift them up. You don't want to just kind of crush them and push them down. So you've got to work in with who they are, what they love, how they want to do it, and then find creative ways to keep them on track. Do it like this, and it has to be like this. There's a small amount of people that actually that's what they're looking for, right? They actually do want that, and that's okay. But it's not the bulk of people, so they want to see results, but not at the expense of enjoyment, not with a lack of joy, if that makes sense. Yeah,
they're going to come pay money to get abused. It's interesting because people always say to me, Toby, you're ultra patient, or you're very uplifting in my lessons, right? And I think the reason why I'm very honest. I'll tell people when it's good. I'll tell you when it's not so good, right? That's what I always say to people. So that just lets them know that when I'm telling them it's good, they can believe me. Yeah. But I think as well, us coaches, we can actually see when the magic's about to happen. So like we can see, we're looking at numbers, we're looking at biomechanics, we're watching the ball, we're just seeing a little bit off of face contact, but we can see something magic's about to happen. And, golf is such a small, fine margin there, right? And I can see a golfer, and as soon as they hit that one, they go, boom, that's the best shot I've ever hit. And I go, you were doing the same thing 6 swings ago. You just got it matched up. You know what I mean? Like you just got that timing right at the bottom of the arc a little bit better this time. But everything else was fine. You've been actually doing what we wanted to get done 6-7 minutes ago. And I think us coaches can see that, and we're just waiting and waiting and waiting. And if it doesn't come, then I guess we've got to step in and make that adjustment there, right? But I think that's one way that sometimes people think that we can be a little bit too over-enthusiastic, because we can see that the person is doing quite well.
Oh, you generally get excited, right? And, they're kind of hitting everything out of the heel, and it's awful, and the sound's wrong, and the vibes in their hands are terrible. And you're like, yeah, more like that. That's so good. And they're like, too much coffee or something. Like, what's wrong with what's this guy doing? But you're right. You're like, the pattern's changed. You know what I mean? And, I'll constantly say to people, I'll go, if you move your golf swing, you move your strike. And you have to have this time where you need to give up strike. You have to sacrifice strike and keep the change. And then you're going to adapt. Then you're going to evolve. Then something is going to click. And each time you want to just come straight back to sweet spot contact. It's your old swing, like it legitimately is. And so keeping people away from that for a long enough period of time, like you just suggested, it can be 8 reps, right? And then pow, and they go, I've never done that before. Like that's just another level. Yeah. And then you've got to get them to do that again. They've got to repeat that cycle again. They need to know that it's good. You got to tell them, and you have to be believable at that point. So you got to show them something and go, hey, see, this was a 6. Now it's a 12. 12's way better. And they're like, okay, all right, I'll keep doing this. I'll keep hitting it almost off the shaft for the next 10 shots, I guess. Yeah. Eventually, when they go through that cycle enough times, then they can identify it themselves, and pow, you're away. You're another level as a golfer straight away.
Yeah, I think we've got a really big role to play, us coaches, and we had the conversation before we started about coaching people, not golfers, and I think that's really, really important to understand what gets a person going, and we want to create a nice environment, people to want to come hang out, and we want smiles 100%. On faces when they come in, and sometimes it's going to be hard, and sometimes it's going to be easy, but I think that's really important. I want to start talking to you about some training at home strategies, right? But I'm going to bring in one of the new sponsors to the podcast. Been a sponsor of mine for a period of time now, but we've introduced him to the podcast, the Net Return Australia. I know you guys are affiliated with them as well, you, Seb, and Matt up there. And TM Golf gets you 10% off. It's called the Net Return because the ball returns when you hit it. I got the Pro Series V2. I love it. But in saying that, Craig, I actually think that you can actually get the junior one is just as good, because people get a bit mistaken by saying junior because I think it's for kids. It's just small. It still works perfectly fine, right? What one are you using up there?
What one don't I have? Those guys are so
Yeah.
kind to me. We've
Yes.
got like the 15, the 12, the 10. We've had 8s,
Yeah.
and you're dead right about the junior. It's so portable, so light.
Yeah.
It weighs nothing, and you can easily just pack it up and take it with you. So we we depend upon that net. The ball speeds obviously are just super crazy that we're getting up to. Seb held the world record at 240 and a bit for a while, and the nets catch that, and they catch it repeatedly. It's just amazing, the quality. So
It's
if you're
remarkable.
going to spend a bunch of time practicing at your house, at your home,
Yeah.
that's the first place you look. Is definitely the net return. You get yourself one of those.
I say all the companies that I'm affiliated with, Craig, is like you buy the Back to Basics putting mirror after you've had 2 or 3 broken, right? 2 or 3 shit ones. And then you buy the net return net after you've had 2 or 3 crap ones, right? Because
Yep.
you do have to pay for quality, and you do get it. And the links are below. HT is an absolute gentleman. If you're in Australia, he'll sort
Yep.
you out. I'll put his details down below. But if you just go straight to the website, I've got the link down below to my website where it's hosted as well. TM Golf gets 10% off. Can you give me a really cool kind of something that a person training speed at home can do? What would you recommend they do?
Okay. So the net can get in really nice and close, and so it's going to capture, miss hits, right?
Yeah.
And so you want to set a distance from the tee with a nice extended follow through and have the net just past that. Okay. Now it can be kind of scary at first,
Yeah.
because you feel like you're really close up to the net. But that's the ideal situation to absolutely like max out and swing your hardest. So the frame is going to catch all the toe hits, heel hits, fins, even if you kind of catch it a little off the crown.
Yeah.
And so when you're really, trusting that net's going to grab it, then
Yeah.
the mind will unlock and you can go a lot harder at it. So you can implement some max out sessions, from the comfort of your own home. How good is that? You don't have to go to the range and spray balls all over the field, and people are watching you, and you're like, this is kind of like a bit sketchy. So the setup's really important. Get it really close to the net. And then the first thing I love people to get into is with their own driver, with a ball, is to get into some step drills and get that lower body really coordinated, get that lower body moving. They are super effective.
A step drill. All right.
Yeah.
So when a person does it, are you talking about trail foot or lead foot?
Both, please. Yeah, absolutely. So if you are someone who has a shorter backswing and, you're kind of looking at that as that may be the issue, then what we do is we set up the front foot in its usual position. We set up the trail foot next door to it, and we step backwards into the backswing to create momentum.
Yeah.
And a bigger, larger thoracic rotation and more stretch and longer hand path. So you imagine stepping into your backswing and adding velocity. So that style of player, that's a beautiful drill for them.
Yeah.
And then take your regular stance, bring your front foot over to the back foot and put that together, and try and get yourself separating and getting yourself really twitchy and moving fast. So as soon as the club breaks away for the backswing, step forward into the front foot and hit the ball hard. So depends on which swing you got and what you want to achieve there, but those are super effective drills.
That's fantastic. And that is, I'll tell you one thing I find with step drills, right, Craig, is I feel like sometimes I have to put like drink bottles outside of the student each time, just because I feel that people step too far.
They can absolutely overstride. Yeah.
Does that happen? Does that happen? Do you reckon people overstride more than they understride?
I think so. Yeah, I think overstriding is a little more common because when you want to move somewhere, we tend to balance on that leg that's holding us up, and we shoot the leg out rather than actually moving our center of mass.
Yeah.
Putting some guidelines in so you don't want to touch them or you don't want to kick them over. That's really important so that footwork gets faster and you're not too leany and floaty, and you actually sharpen up the footwork so you move more quickly.
And I want to clear up something with you here that I only learnt recently. I think it was Dr. Sasha McKenzie talking about the force in the ground with the feet. It's more about how fast you are, isn't it? It's not about how much pressure, it's how fast you are. Is like he was talking about how there's 5 times more the force goes in the ground when you're jogging than there is in a golf swing.
Yeah, well stated actually. So you could certainly, if you were on a pressure mat, if you hopped up on a stool and you jumped up into the air and fell down onto the pressure mat, you would blow Kyle Berkshire away.
Wow.
Your pressure would go crazy.
Yeah.
So with regards to the golf swing, the amount of pressure that those guys develop on a pressure mat is astounding. So it's it's double body weight, 2.5 times body weight, approaching triple body weight. But then you bring out a stat like your jog, it's 5 times. So it tells you that it's not everything, and that how fast you can move that center of pressure, or for the person at home, center of mass, how quickly you can move from foot to foot, is probably a better indicator than necessarily just kind of the amount of pressure, if that's kind of what we're talking about.
Yeah. And are the faster guys getting back to the lead side quicker in the downswing?
Yeah, they are. If you're looking at kind of like a tour player versus a long driver, when we say quicker, it's interesting because the long drive swing is longer and travels further.
Yes.
But they're still doing something which a lot of people like to refer to as recentering pressure.
Yep.
And what that means basically is that you move onto your trail side and you move pressure back towards your lead side. So the pressure doesn't stay in the middle, it moves out and moves back in.
Yeah.
And everybody's timing is just a little bit different, but we're trying to do that when the backstroke's complete. So it's not a downstroke thing that we move pressure to the front. It's actually part of the backstroke that we're trying to achieve that. Yeah. So that's early and that's fast, and that does freak a lot of people out when we start working on that. So
when you get to, let's say, club shaft level to the ground in the backswing P2, let's just say Seb, his numbers, how much pressure or mass, how much mass as a percentage has he got on the trail foot?
All of it.
All of it. So at P2, he's already shifted 100% to the trail foot.
100%. And then we're actually working on that with him at the moment. And so he'll move to the trail foot and the trail knee will flex. So he'll balance on that leg, which is the right leg. He's a right-hander. And then he'll push into the ground to lift himself up off the ground.
Yeah.
That increases pressure in the trail side and it lifts his lead side off the ground. So there's nothing there at all. He's actually, in that part of the swing, he's balancing on that right foot. So he's completely on that foot, the trail foot, the right foot.
Now, can you give me a number that when he's, let's just say when the club's about to start changing direction to the down, just the club, right? How much mass, where's he situated there?
Well, he's really interesting, right? Because he has 2 downswings.
That's
right. Yeah.
You have to explain that. 2 downswings.
Yeah.
Why has he got 2 downswings? He's got a pump, right?
Yeah. So he loves a drill that I gave him so much that he's made it his golf swing. So we load the backswing first, and then what we do from the top of the swing is we move the arms and the wrists and the shaft in the back. Away from the target. Yeah. And at the same time, what he does is he moves his center of mass down into his left foot. And what this does is kind of gets on top of a tendency for him where he would narrow the club and rotate the shoulders just a little too early. And the drill produced really great results, and it made him really quite clear when he was hitting balls even, because he felt like he just repeated the rehearsal. So it's kind of like, I'm just going to do 2 of these so I'm even clearer about what I do. So I said, Coach, can I just keep doing this all the time? Can I please make this my golf swing? And I'm like, okay, yeah. I mean, if we're getting results, we're getting results. We don't need to change that. So when he's performing that motion, he's trying to slam his front foot against the ground. Mm-hmm. And when a player does that, when you smash that front foot against the ground, you're going to have a moment where, if you are on a pressure mat, for example, you're going to go 100% front foot when the club's just starting down.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
So how much does that differ in the actual when he does go back down again? Is it different much in the ground?
It's wild, yeah. So if you're watching the display, the pressure's like this, and if you're trying to watch the percentages at the sides, I mean, you're just going like this. It's going crazy. So you have to slow it right down and just kind of go frame by frame and watch how the numbers are reacting. But when you reload again, you're 100% trail again. You back up onto the trail foot, nothing on the front foot again, and then you smash down into that front foot again. So he works through 100% in both feet, like multiple times throughout the swing.
That's so crazy. Yes.
It
So
is.
for people talking, listening to the numbers there, right? I'm going to give you some guidelines for professional golf, right? So my players, hopping that like some of my pros, we're going to be starting like, just call it 50-50, right? Maybe 52, lead side 48. We get to lead side level, lead arm left, so left arm level to the ground in the backswing, so P3 for the person who's a golf novice. That's when we see them at their heaviest. It's about like 65-ish%. Would you agree around there? 65% at lead arm.
Little high for some players, yeah.
Yeah, but then at the top, it depends how well you shift. Depends on what you're working on, right? But if you're narrower, you're going to be less. But it's top of the backswing, they're like 50-50. But it's interesting because we're working in such smaller numbers there where you're talking 100, 100, 100, 100. It's Burko. That's crazy. So the step through drill is a great drill. And that's a drill that Seb does?
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a catalog, and we'll cycle through them. We use them for certain parts of it, like we said, with that peaking process. It's very straightforward. We try and pump energy into a backswing to get started, so his backswing cadence is higher, and he loads harder. Now, that can be from the ball back, which we want to keep practicing in case one day we go back to single pump, or from the pumped position, loading up to the top. And then once that's starting to get into a place where we really like it, the hand path length's good, he's got massive thoracic rotation, he looks like he's turned all the way back around to the camera if you're filming in front on. Then you start transition and pumping energy into transition. And then from there, you're looking at going through impact. And occasionally we'll do a little bit of post-impact work so that he can relate something prior to impact to that post-impact finishing position. It's a skill to balance at the end of those swings when you're 160 mile an hour. It's something you have to learn so you don't end up on your butt. And you kind of got to practice it.
I love it. Well, that brings us to the end of the Net Return Australia segment there, how to train at home. And Craig there has spoken about the step-through drill to help you with your speed there. I love it. One thing I kind of added there was about I use a drink bottle on either side of the stepping because I feel like sometimes it can be difficult for people to manage how far to step and where to kind of start. But that's a great one there. Support the podcast. TM Golf, get you 10% off your net return net. Alrighty, Craig, I've got some throwaway questions for you here, right?
Okay.
Just some kind of little throwaway stuff. But there's one question I had for you, a technical question that I was thinking, but has now left me. But it's interesting for people listening to this, when we were talking, before we get into just the throwaway questions before we close up, we're talking about Seb's double pump. And if you were to Google casting in the golf swing, how many people come to me and say, Toby, I'm casting the golf swing? Well, I know a guy who's really fast who trains this. It's interesting, isn't it? We're talking about Seb is completely, you're saying that he's faster when he's unloading everything from the top of the backswing, where we might see the recreational golfer try to pull on that handle and get narrower. It's mind-blowing for people to understand that, isn't it, Craig?
It is. With all due respect to the listeners and everybody out there, and I've been through it with lots and lots of people, it doesn't click the first time. It takes time for the brain to conceptually kind of figure out how that's quicker and how that might work. And there's a lot of people who possibly when they first got into golf, they wanted lag, and they were like, oh, lag's the best thing in the world. They've probably hit some shots and they felt like they were lagging the club and the ball came out sweetly, and then, this is the greatest thing on earth. It's just a little bit misunderstood. It's essentially, it was like a 2D thing from kind of like photos and, not a 3D thing. So 2D, it kind of looks like that's the right thing to do, is to kind of like pull it in and narrow it and keep it close and all that kind of stuff. But thankfully over time we've got, better technology. We measure things a little bit better than we used to, and it ain't the thing to do. You want energy in that handle. You want that handle flying like as fast as you can get that thing going. So bit of a misconception there, I suppose. And Seb himself, he had to kind of looked at me strangely the first time we worked, and he's like, you want me to what? You sure? I'm like, yeah, let's go for it.
So tell me about hand speed at left arm level to the ground in the downswing at P5. Are the hands traveling their fastest then? And then coming into the golf ball, I think it's a big misconception that people don't understand how much the hands slow down and impact, right? Have you got some kind of numbers that you can share with us around that?
that's probably a pretty good spot where you're talking about that kind of left arm parallel. Successful long drivers will go a little bit past that and also be a little bit shy of that as well.
Okay.
And they're outstanding numbers of like 44 and 42 and 32 miles per hour. Nowhere near club speed. They're just nowhere near it. So the goal is to move the hands quickly during that part of the swing, but we're not talking like getting to 140 with hands or anything like that. That doesn't occur.
Yes.
And energy transfer from the body out to the arms occurs, and that energy in the arms goes through the wrists, then it goes into the golf club. And it can't do that if the arms are still moving the fastest of all those components.
Yeah.
And that energy transfer, I guess it slows a segment and passes the energy onto the next segment. And that's why down at the ball, the hands, if they were 25, they're now sort of 15. They're slowing down. They're moving in a different direction. They've passed their energy onto the club shaft, for instance, and that's passing its energy to the club head.
Yeah, I think it's a big misconception out there amongst a lot of golfers is that we actually, if you want to put speed in the head, we've got to try and get that handle to start stalling out, to start throwing speed into the head. People, I use the terminology a lot, Craig, and are you swinging the club head or are you swinging the club? And I want a lot of people to start thinking about swinging the club head. There's a reason you got a typical shaft flex, you know what I mean, to kind of match the energy you're putting into it. And I think if coaches out there can start showing people, even with that one whippy club that I got one of those, just showing people that how that club needs to square up. It's not the big misconception, because you talk about getting narrow at the top. That also leads at the bottom, pushing the handle, right? So we see that kind of there. So when I used to say to people, do you want to hit it 5 meters further? I want you to try and throw the club head at me in the downswing. They were like, what? I go, yeah, try it.
Absolutely.
And I go, watch the club. The club's going to go, zoom, it's going to get faster, and the ball's going to go miles. I say, you owe me lunch.
And power. They usually launch it higher as well. All the good things happen. And shaft flex is really interesting. I guess most people think it starts at kind of senior or lady, and then it goes, kind of regular stiff, extra stiff, tour extra stiff. When you get into long drive, it gets softer again and softer and softer and softer. And we've got a 38-gram shaft, which is called a free flex, which if you just hang on to it like that and you hold the head, you can just about touch the head and the handle together. It's very similar to kind of one of those lag shot clubs that people can play around with.
Yeah.
And so the physics curve, it changes a lot. So, those guys are not using tour extra stiff and beefed up tips. And we want as much of that energy transfer on the back of that ball as we possibly can. We want as much cast and whip and all that kind of stuff, because it just makes the ball go a heck of a lot further. Why hold energy in a shaft when you can transfer energy to the club head?
That is so interesting. But people listen to this going, what do you mean? Like Seb's using a regular flex type, like these shafts are soft, aren't they? But I remember talking to Seb when he had his first long drive shaft. It was way too stiff for him.
Yeah, and, 100%.
That's so interesting that they're using such a soft shaft. And no wonder it's so hard to square that thing up. That thing's whipping around like a noodle. That's unbelievable.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it is really, really super whippy. And so you got to use them for a period of time, then you get used to them, and it's easy to square them up once you're used to them.
What's a strategy to help someone increase their hand speed and deceleration?
Hand speed out of the top, to me, you want to be able to change level with your pelvis, okay? And what that means is at the lead arm parallel backstroke, you've gotten taller, so you've gotten away from the ground. And then by the time your lead arm parallel downstroke, your pelvis is dropped and you've dropped into that front foot. It takes coordination and timing, but that drop of our body makes our hands travel really quickly. So that's probably a really massive component of that. If we stay nice and level with the pelvis, we tend to not really have a lot of power in that area. So
you're not talking about anterior tilt, posterior tilt. You're talking about just actual vertical lift of the pelvis.
Yeah, correct. Exactly. To and away from the ground, the entire pelvis. Yeah, not just tilting, not flexion extension either, just literally the player getting off the ground and falling down to the ground. So that height change in pelvis is a really cool study done a few years ago. And when you plot it and you get the graph out and you go, who changes height in the pelvis more? It's the people at the top of the club speed chain up here through tour players, as well as when you get into the long drive world.
That's interesting. God, there's so much to get done in such a small period of time.
Yeah, right. I wish there was a second, but there's not even that. There's barely half a second. Yeah.
It's interesting when you talk about, long drive and some of the stuff that you're talking about. And what I'm hearing is adding pieces to the golf swing. And that's just my observation. And I feel like what I'm doing in my day-to-day life is I'm taking things away, essentially. Like, don't do that. You don't need to do this. Don't do that. Don't need to do this. Stay steadier. Don't lift your pelvis up off the ground. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, let's stay here with me. Don't run away from the ball. Like, it's so interesting. There's such contrasting things that we're looking for out of our students on a day-to-day basis.
Oh, definitely. And you've got to know when it's appropriate, right? And you've got to know when actually there is excessive motion, which is wasting energy and kind of costing that person club head speed. And you go, hey, you know what? We can actually kind of not do that. We can do less of that. Yeah. And club speed increases. Just as when someone's being too passive in their motion and too restricted in their motion, and they've plateaued, they've peaked. They're like, I can't go any faster. It's like, well, we've got to kind of get a little bit out of the box here, and we're going to move around a little bit more. And it might just be training. Their regular golf swing might still be very similar to what it was when it was 5 mile an hour ago or 10 mile an hour ago, but the speed training might be very Francesco Molinari-esque, which a few years ago he was doing that crazy drill where he'd try and touch the sky and then he would touch the ground and then he would jump and twist. But he just wanted those pieces of his golf swing to have more energy in them.
Yeah.
And that transferred into his swing, but on the course, you wouldn't really know. You wouldn't have seen like a massive difference to his golf swing. That famously one of the straightest hitters of all time. He picked up a few mile an hour ball speed. But the drill he was doing was people going, whoa.
I know, it's outrageous.
What's he up to? Yeah.
I have him on my drill list of under concepts due to the nature of trying to educate people on, look how wild what Francesco's doing. Look how wild Seb's doing. I got Seb on my list, right?
Yep.
Look how wild Justin Rose's exercise is.
Totally.
Ask for a mile to get an inch. That's what I say in this game, right?
Oh, massively. Yeah, that's huge. Yeah.
That's lovely. It's so interesting about that hand speed. And when I asked you about doing that, you didn't even talk about the hands. That was quite interesting. You spoke about the pelvis being the big driver to increasing hand speed.
Yeah. If a player can kind of like clean up, improve pelvic motion, it just goes so far. It's probably not too big a statement to say nearly everything's built around that. Yeah. And it has an influence to, whatever you want to do in those other parts of the body, whether it's knee and ankle flexion, whether it's shoulder rotation, what the arms do. The pelvis is massive. It's really huge.
It's huge in the golf swing, like in the actual golf, because it's the hub. Its tilt plays such a pivotal role in regards to what happens to your upper hub. It's huge. It's absolutely huge, I think. And then what also happens to that is the importance of your knee flex, the importance of all this stuff to match your correct tilt that you need, posterior, anterior, wherever you need to kind of push towards. I think a lot of people like early extension, if we're talking about just golf coaching here, can come from a lot of the time just people not setting their pelvis correctly through to not setting their legs in the ground properly. You know what I mean? They just kind of too up and down with their shins and the pelvis has got nowhere to go. Of course it's going to move up and posterior.
Absolutely. The address position is just triggering it, right? Just how they're setting to the ball. They're ready to early extend. They're basically setting up to early extend. So, yeah, you're right. Change address position and sometimes that problem goes away. 100%. For other players, it's the first couple of movements in the swing and, where they thought they needed to go. And then, for some players, like a touch of early extension is great. If they're a fraction early and they're centering the ball and they're, angle attacks up and they're sending drives and they're Greg Norman, Jack Nicklaus, and they're early extending a little bit, that's okay. That amount is desirable for that player. For other players that are trying to do some stuff that's going to hamper them, they can't do that. They've got to find another solution, that's for sure.
I tell you what's interesting is that I talking about just a case study recently, just golf coach is one of my students, and he's TPI, he's a physio, so he's got unbelievable amount of, I guess, mind-body awareness around his body, right, and how he moves his pelvis. And we're working. He's kind of a newbie golfer, but he's off a 12 handicap, right? Because he's just kind of picked it up so quickly.
Yeah,
and been working for a while about why his arms are coming across the body, this way. And I was just studying him. And I was like, I want you to jump at the ball. And he's like, what? I said, I want you to jump. And he's like, what, early extend? I was like, don't worry what it's called, just jump.
Yeah.
And next thing, all of a sudden, as we extended, arms got pushed out further, and it became difficult to manage because all of a sudden he was hitting some of these 7-irons like 170, like just going forever because he's an AFL player. And so I've got to try and learn to manage, like you said, a little bit of early extension. But there's a very interesting case study where I actually could probably say that it's one of the very few times in my life I've actually encouraged a student to early extend.
Oh, yeah. Someone needs to raise the handle. If the handle's coming in too low, swing direction's too negative.
Yep.
Man, and they just can't seem to do anything up here. Nothing's happening. Let's go to the legs, right? Push on the ground and get that handle raising up through the hit.
Yeah.
That's phenomenal for the longer clubs, for driver and, even kind of fairways and things like that. So that's a great solution for that player. It's beneficial in that case, right?
I'm going to say for longer clubs, it's important. Like I'll talk about a long left side for the right-handed golfer with longer clubs, like a long into the shaft. This way we want everything kind of moving upward to create space, the hands to come up, right? Otherwise you kind of stay stuck down in front bend. There's lots of little nuances, the difference between hitting wedges and hitting long irons for sure. And I hit my long irons so much better when I feel like I'm jumping at the ball. It doesn't look like it, but it just feels like it.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah,
that's really cool. I really enjoyed that. All right, tell me now some throwaway questions, right? Actually, before we get into this, do you do online coaching as well, Craig?
I do, mate. Yeah, I use the Skillers platform. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic! And do you have the subscription platform for that as well?
Yep, absolutely. Yep.
And you're dealing with just, I shouldn't say just, but are you on long drive people specifically, like people wanting distance?
No, everything. So it's completely open to all golfers. There's definitely long drive professionals that I work with that are overseas. That's the best platform to work with. There's definitely golfers that ask for driver training specifically, but then there's people who just want to improve at golf. So, short game, putting, wedges, all that kind of stuff. So it's the full gamut. I guess more people are starting to know me as someone who can help them with their speed production and get the ball further down the fairway. So there is a bunch of that as well, which I enjoy. I love it.
That's fantastic. What do you like about the subscription? Do you have the subscription model? Do you like the ability to touch base with the students?
Exactly. And one thing that I try to let them all know when they first start is like, hey, you've got an electronic diary right now, and blast it. Like if you think of something, write a note. If you just grab a club around the house, you had an idea, film yourself, send it through, ask questions. So you've got a diary here. You can, if you're training for 3 months, you can look back at any point and go, hey, that's what we're doing here. I forgot about that. Let's go back to that and get back on track. It's phenomenal for that. It's just on your phone. It's an app. You don't have to have a book that you carry around. You don't have to have notepads, pens and paper around. It's with you all the time. It's really phenomenal for that. And I just really encourage people that use that platform to, like, if you're going anywhere near a range, like document, like film, just plaster stuff in there. It's just brilliant.
Yeah, I have all my students minimum 2-3 times a week. We should be touching base with swings.
Perfect. That's 100%. Yeah.
It's a fantastic way to train. And I use the platform a lot, obviously, but I use the community chat where we talk to all my students. I love it for that as well. Kind of talk about, Scotty Scheffler's win, or talk about lots of stuff. Go live with them all. It's really fun. All right, throwaway questions. Tell me, what's your favorite takeaway food? Do you have takeaway food?
Oh, I mean, do I have takeaway food? What kind of question is that? Number one, Chinese takeaway food. Love it. Go to a restaurant. Go to a restaurant food, Italian. Yusheng Rusi.
Yes. Oh, that's nice. And what, bit of honey soy chicken?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you got to have that as well. Black bean, beef.
It's
I'm
funny.
So hungry right now.
It's funny because Chinese was the kind of first takeaway in Australia, wasn't it?
Yeah, you're probably right. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like the first thing that kind of got introduced was Chinese. Like my father just absolutely raves it.
Amazing.
What's the best advice you've ever received?
If you stick at something long enough, you'll be successful.
Love that. Have you got anything for what's the worst advice you've ever received?
Oh, have I got anything? I've got too much. But it would have probably been someone that's enjoyed far too much of an evening and then tried to pass on some wisdom at a very late point in the night, which I'm trying to purge from my mind. So I probably try not to bring it back up right now.
That's okay. Have you got a big sliding doors moment in your life where things changed for you for the positive or the negative?
So forgive me, I haven't seen that movie. I'm going to go watch it.
Yes.
But I'm kind of picking up like it's, something happening kind of accidentally that, a door opens up and away you go. And
well, hanging out with Grant Field, right? That's a pretty big door to hang out with, Mr. Grant Field.
Yeah, that's probably like before that. I just had a game of golf with a friend, and it literally was just a friend that I used to hang out with. And he's like, I think you should do this. And I was like, do what? And he goes, this, you can make a career of this. And I was like, golf? And he's like, yeah, I really think you can. And then, fast forward later, I was, did my traineeship at that golf club, became a professional, and then, Grant, started working with him for a little while. It was amazing.
Unreal. If you could be any athlete in the world, non-golfer, who would it be?
Wow. Okay. Non-golfer.
Yes.
Man.
Don't know.
I'm going to go with Shohani, which is the baseball player in the States, Japanese origin guy.
Oh, of course.
I used to play baseball. I used to try and bat and pitch. And he's just phenomenal at both at the same time. Shohei Ohtani. I'm going to go with him, and he signed quite a nice contract recently.
Did he sign one of the weirdest? $70 million. Yeah, but wasn't it so weird? Like it's so back-ended or something because of tax purposes or something?
Yeah, I think there's quite a lot of tax strategy to it. So he retains quite a lot of it at the end of that period.
Yeah.
That sounds kind of smart, probably.
It was a very, very interesting contract. I don't know anything about baseball. I don't even know the guy, but when you mentioned contract, I read about it. It was quite bizarre. It was quite bizarre.
It's the first of its kind, I think. Yeah, something like that.
What's your favorite golf club in the bag?
You ready for this?
You're not going to say your lob wedge. Oh, really?
Yeah, 60 degree, 100%.
What? I did not expect that. What, so you can knife at 250 meters?
I can do that, yeah.
Can you? What's the furthest you pitch your lob wedge? Knifing it?
Yeah, around about that. I think probably about 230.
It's unbelievable.
I've hit a putter 235.
Wow.
That was the end of that putter.
I was going to say, you have to make sure it's glued up nicely, right? Do you know you talk about that, right, Craig? Is I was working at a golf course when I was very young, and we sold these chippers, right? Like these chipper clubs. And this guy comes into me, and all his mates bought chippers. And he kept coming out to keep re-gluing this chipper. And I was like, mate, what's going on with this chipper? And he goes, I use it on 11. And I was like,
oh, I love it.
I said, what do you mean you use it on 11? He goes, yeah, it's perfect for the par 3 at the back there. I was like, oh, man, this ain't built for that. And he goes, I love it. So I just had to keep re-gluing this chipper thing for this guy because he was just using it off 11. I may
have lost interest in a round from playing not so well in particular. I got to the 17th hole at the course that I was playing in the competition and thought, hey, why not? I wonder if I can get to this par 3 with my putter. Just a little bit of top edge, just perfect. Went really high, 165, spun this feet, NTP. Went up at presentations to accept my nearest to pin, and everyone in my group yelled out, and it was with a putter. I was like, shh.
No way.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's so cool.
I don't think I could repeat that.
What numbers do you get with the putter on TrackMan? Like, what spin rate do you get?
I reckon I had total meters, and I didn't look at anything else.
Yeah.
I probably should have.
It'd be interesting to see what.
I'll do it again. Yeah, I'll do it again.
Because we know that grooves don't play a role in spin, right? It's
exactly
it's grooves on an iron. They just play a role to help push out crap, right?
100% like slicks on a Formula One car. They don't want to use treaded tires if they don't have to use them. It's just when debris is going to get between the tire and the road. And so it's just debris between the face and the ball. It's the only purpose that grooves have. Yep.
It's crazy. Yeah, because I saw a study with Mr. Andrew Rice a very, very long time ago talking about he was hitting a wedge with no grooves. And I can't remember the numbers, but it was mind-blowing when I first got into TrackMan. I was like, what the hell?
They spin like crazy, and as young golfers, we had access to angle grinders, and so once your wedge was all worn out,
Yeah.
you just grind it right back so it was all shiny and rough, and you just go to the chipping area and spin these things back on their head. It was just crazy. It was so much fun.
All right, what's your favourite golf course?
In Queensland, it's called Bribie Island. In Australia, I would say I can't split Royal Melbourne and La Perouse or New South Wales.
Okay, yeah.
And my favourite overseas course that I've played is Wentworth West, which is amazing.
New South Wales is great. I love New South Wales. I've played them a lot. Yeah. I just, for me as a golfer and where I'm at now, I just want no wind, Craig. I just want some tree line fairways.
I love it.
I was a member at Longreef Golf Course in Northern Beaches of Sydney, there at Collaroy, and I used to say to my friends, I'm just sick of not being able to talk to you on the fairway. It's just so noisy.
I love that. Yeah.
But anyways, Craig, you've been great with your time. I appreciate you coming on the podcast, mate. People want to catch you. I'll put your Instagram down below and your Skillest link if they want to catch you. And mate, appreciate you coming on the Golf Coach podcast. It was great.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.